Okay, we are recording. So, hi everyone, thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is our 11th show and tell now, so we are rattling through them. And this is a show and tell about a project called Rebuilding Greenwich's Community Directory, and it is the 11th of October 2022. So, as always, we just like to quickly start by highlighting what a show and tell is. So a show and tell is a regular event where we, as the core project team working on this, like to show progress early and often so that we can get feedback from everyone to help shape what we do next and get your input as kind of key stakeholders or potential future users, etc., of the product that we're building. And it's also a really nice opportunity for us to make connections with other projects and other bits of work that are going on, also other people working in that space, potentially other local authorities. And this is particularly important for this project where we've got lots of different users of the community directory product. So yeah, it's just a nice opportunity to get us all together to have a collective conversation and to really update you and be visible about what we're doing as we progress through the work. So in today's show and tell, we're going to be covering some updates that we've done and some tweaks that we've made to our prototypes. We're going to be covering also around our testing, so who we've been testing with recently and the risky assumptions that we've been kind of testing as part of that and grappling through. Then we're going to explain the rationale and the approach that we're taking to our proof of concept work. And then we're going to have a quick update on how our first reusable show and tell event went, which was last week or the week before. I think it was last week. So yeah, we'll give you a quick update on how that went, and we'll share the link to that as well if you want to watch it in your own time. And we're doing these things so that you have a sense of how we're iterating our work in progress, so you can hear who we are engaging with and have an opportunity to point us towards others that we might not be aware of. And ultimately, as always, get to see some of our work in progress and have that opportunity to tell us what you think about it. So that's what we're going to be covering today, and this is who we are. So we're a blended team working on this project of colleagues made up of digital, public health, adults and children's services, and we're also collaborating with a product partner called TPX Impact on the reusable element of this work as well. And our mission is to design a community product that makes it easy for residents to understand and connect to the support available in their local community, creates a more sustainable and devolved way to publish and update content, and is reusable and easy to adopt for other local authorities. And on that final point, that part of the sort of the reusable element of this work is funded by the local digital fund. So that's it on some quick context of what we're going to be doing this afternoon and who we are. I'm going to now hand over to Jenny, who's going to talk us through our prototyping updates. Over to you, Jenny.
Hello. So I'm going to show you some prototyping updates to our design. I think the last show and tell we did show our prototype. It has moved along since, just some small tweaks though, just based on some of the testing and feedback we've gotten from collaborators and stakeholders. There's still a gap with getting resident input, but we'll talk about that in a bit later. But yeah, I'll just go over some of the changes and updates we've made and why. So the homepage of the directory, previously we showed a design that was kind of split up by type of user or type of audience. So we, as you can see in the screenshot, we had adults, families, young people, and then two other categories we weren't really sure about, but health and like the local offer or people with SEND. But since then, we've been talking a lot about, well, how can we help people navigate all the different types of services? Some people may not identify with a user group, like navigating by user group. Maybe they have a particular topic, but also thinking about, along with Alicia, our content designer, like how are we going to filter different services, and how are we going to organize services, and how do we foreground that so people understand how to navigate it. So we changed the homepage to represent topics. that the different services cover. So the topics really overlap across different user types. But we still have user type as a way to navigate. So depending on how you want to navigate or where you want to start, you have options of how you want to go through that by topic or by user type. We've also added things like just changing the title subtly with adding in find support and services, just to make it feel more active and make it really clear about what you can do on the GCD. And we've also changed some of the headings too. A few other things is that we're just making sure we do have a helpline phone number on there. I think previously we didn't have that in, but we're just making sure that we do provide that on the relevant pages. So that is a phone line for people that if they feel like they need more support and want to talk to someone, that's where they would call. Another change is, I think last time we didn't really fully design all the listings. So now on the listing page or the search results page, you can see for each service, we've added some tags as well to tell you what type of service it is and what need it might cover. But something's still to test. And then we looked into filters. We didn't really think about the filters in more detail, but we have some ideas about filters still to test and work out, I think, and better understand how the data in the backend can be organized. But we did add in some filters to test out. And then if we go to the next slide. A few last weeks is around if you remember previously, and I'll go through a quick demo as well to refresh ourselves about all the different parts of the GCD, but we had something called like curated and topical listings, so pages where it was really targeted recommendations of services based on topic or really trying to help people navigate certain topics as well. So we've kind of changed some of the labeling and to differentiate between what we're calling curated listings and topical listings. We're using the word collections as an example for the topical listings to show the recommendations. But yeah, something to test out as well about the language and if people understand if that's different. And then we've just been experimenting with a lot of just visual design tweaks. We could do that forever. But we've been trying out some different icons and colors, but a lot of that will probably come a bit later when we really think about maybe the identity and branding and how that fits as well. And collaborating with comms on that, I think we've mentioned in the past. But yeah, I think that's it. And then one last thing, a new thing, I don't think we really looked at the details of services, so we didn't prototype a page to show the service listing detail yet. But when we started looking at it, I think Alicia and I, we both were really thinking about, what information is important. And Alicia took a look at the differences between different types of services. So the between a service that's offered versus like an activity and what's different and if there's a priority order to the information. I think what we came up with is that we do want things to be consistent. So we want things to kind of look the same and people know where to find that information about different services, but make sure that, the key information is kind of at the top. So we're testing this out still, the order of it. I'll go into detail in the demo, but we had these questions in mind about, what type of information is important, but also the ordering of them as well. And then I think there's nothing else, but I'm going to show you a demo first.
Well, I'll just stop sharing and hand over to you.
Some of the things might similar or familiar from the last time. Can you see a phone screen? Great.
Yeah.
So this is the home page. So as you can see, we're providing different ways for people to search and navigate. These are all the different topics related to the type of services that we have, and then the kind of user type categories as well. And then we're just kind of exploring different content as well on the homepage. So even things like these collections or more topical things could be highlighted. And then, of course, the helpline phone number is available if people need them. But from here, there's different ways you can navigate. So I can go and browse all, which just takes me to the service listing search page with everything there, and I can kind of scroll, search, filter. I could also go by topic. So if I were to say that I wanted to see what's available in health and well-being, I can click there, and that just brings me to a filtered list of the services related to health and well-being. And I can further filter or use keywords. The other way was by user type. So because we are focusing on the support for adults in this initial alpha and the testing, we have spec'd out what that looks like for adults. So we have the landing page, which I think we showed, but the purpose of the landing page is to further help people navigate what's available for adults. And these are just different topics. So you could click on one of these and it'll take you to a listing, but with that filtered. So it's kind of a guided almost way to filter out the different services. And then here's where we had the curated listings. So the curated listings were all about also highlighting kind of key areas that people might be interested in, but also highlighting like how you navigate them and what's available. So if I was interested in help to live independently, I can click on that and it provides you some subtopics about what could help with living independently and some of the type of services available. And then again, from here, there's another route. So if I was really interested in equipment, I can go there and it takes me to a list of the equipment available. And then the last thing, or one of the last things around these listings is the topical listings. So I think this works the same way, but just to remind people, if there's certain topics, key topics at the time, it's really more of a targeted recommendations list almost. So it gives you really specific services around that topic. And then you can view details. So if I click on Blackheath, friendship group, it will show me that. And this is kind of one of the pages that we mocked up. Yeah, and the type of information that people may or may not be looking for. I think this was really interesting around the information page because Alicia and I were kind of understanding like what the back end of things were, like how is data input into as a listing, and you know the information that's input in there. How do we present that as well? It doesn't have to be necessarily the same, but so what makes sense for a service provider, for example, to input, and how do we help people input the right information and good quality information as well. But then also, how might we represent that? So that's probably something that we'll be investigating later because I think there's some different ways that you can present service detail information. And yeah, I think that's it.
Cool. Thanks, Jenny. I will share my screen again. Cool. So obviously we've just clicked through and shown you quite a lot there. So we just want to pause before we move on any further to check in to see if anyone's got any questions, any thoughts or feedback on what we've shown with the prototypes. I can see there's a question in here already from Philippa, which is what's the difference between curated and topical listing, please? So we might have covered that slightly in that demo, but perhaps Jenny, would you be up for answering that, or Alicia?
Yeah, the curated is more of, I guess it's a particular type of topic as well, or like a need that someone might have. So the example that we showed was help to live independently. And it's not really a recommendations list. It's more like, here's one of the topics that you might be interested in, or that we know that people are really, you know, looking for the most. It's almost like a little guide, like where do you start What types of services are there? And it breaks down some of the subtopics related to it and just gives you like a list of what types of services could help with that that need that you have, if that makes sense. Rather than like a like a super curated like recommendations list, if that makes sense. Yeah, Rebecca's like, is there another way to say curated? I don't know. Whereas the topical listings, what we've been calling them, I think this is a thing as well internally, like we really know what these are and using words that may not be understandable to those outside the project. But what we're calling topical listings, or I guess collections, are things like really specific topics that might be of interest to people right now. They're topics that might change more frequently than the curated listings that we talked about. They are kind of hot topics now, things that we know people need now, and they are really just a finite list, 5 to 10 services, for example, that are recommended by us, versus a curated one, which is more like helping people just navigate what types of services are available for a particular need.
Does that answer your question, Philippa?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think it's possibly unearthed a bit of a language question.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's fine. I had another question but I can see that there's some hands up, so I can pause on that question for the moment.
Right, let's go over to Lydia next, and then if we've got time, we'll come back to you, Philippa, or if not, can be later on. So yeah, go for it, Lydia.
Yes. So looking at adult social care at the moment, as we are, we're looking, like, we know that one of the key things there is that people have times where they are looking for services, that they need to look for specific advice, and they're often getting referred to services by staff. What is the capacity for, and do you have an idea of what the process will be about creating dedicated landing pages or hubs that can support people where they have a specific and often repeated need? So, I need to look for care right now, or I have been found that I don't have eligible needs, so I'm going to need to try and get help myself. What's the scope that you see for that happening, and I suppose processes to make sure that you keep those the numbers of those things limited while making sure that you serve a lot of those needs? Cheers.
Very good question. Maybe Alex, do you want to come in on that first?
Yeah, I can start, and then maybe Alicia, if you might have some other thoughts. It's a really good question, Lydia, and I think we probably don't fully know the answer. I guess depending on the journey will depend maybe where the information should sit, and that's an ongoing conversation we're having. So if that journey you described is primarily on the council website, maybe it makes more sense for some of the information to sit there and then signpost off to the directory. I guess if we have categories of services on the directory, they're really good to sign people straight to those. I think we will do it based on a like, if we can see a clear user need to have more bespoke content on the directory, then we'll definitely have it. But yeah, probably take it as it comes, but need to do a bit of work with you to look at those journeys that start on the main website.
Cool, thanks. It'll be interesting then, I think, to make quite a clear distinction about what should be a website hub that connects strongly to the community directory and links there, versus what is a community directory curated collection, whatever. And yeah, we're very happy to, as a demo project, maybe to work out what that might look like for somebody that's in the early stages of the adult social care journey and is looking for that kind of information, to talk through that. That's cool.
Thanks, Lydia.
Cool. I can see a couple more comments in the chat. So nice comment from Eleanor about clarity and consistency in structuring the information, and also Sean's point around recommendation. Yeah, absolutely. But I think just for timing, and we've got a few more things to get through, I'm going to move us along, and then Philippa, we can, if you hold your other question for now, we can come back to it at the end, or at another point. So now handing over to Steve.
Thanks a lot. We took our prototypes to a local event to get initial feedback, and a few of us attended a primary care event at Charlton Athletic FC, where we had a stall to show our work on the directory. Now, we spoke to GPs, practice nurses, live well coaches to get feedback on our prototypes and to discuss how we can make it easier for them to signpost residents to local services. The feedback was positive. We found a good appetite from professionals for the signposting directory. The prototype felt more structured and easier to use than the current community directory. They liked it that the prototype kept language simple. Okay, next slide. Okay, so one of the features which the LiveWell coaches like is the ability to text and email listings to residents, for example, a short list or a curated listing. Also, as mentioned earlier on, the need for a telephone helpline to support people who are less confident with IT. So we're making changes to our prototypes based on the feedback, and also the need for more imagery. And generally, the need to promote the directory to ensure that it's used across the community. It was a good opportunity to recruit participants to in-depth testing, and that includes the LiveWell coaches who can do some dedicated testing with us. And on that, I'm going to hand over to Alicia, who's going to talk a bit more about our approach to testing with residents.
Thank you. So hi everyone, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we're testing now. So we're currently focusing our testing with resident groups, focusing on adult social care and health at the moment. So we're doing 2 lots of research activities. They're kind of overlapping at the moment. So we've started some online tree testing, and we're also looking at doing some in-person prototype testing as well. So the tree testing we're currently running is an online task, and that's where residents get a sort of a preset scenario, and we're asking them to find that information using only the homepage category and subcategory labels. We've got a video here just to show an example of what that is. Hopefully you can read what it says. It's quite small.
You want me to press play?
Yeah, that'd be great. So we'll pause it there just to stop some of the silence and continue. So we've sent this out to community champions who are residents who, we sent these out to community champions, some residents who came along to the Dementia Week event, and some professionals from the primary care event at Charlton Athletic that Steve mentioned. The point of this testing is to help us understand if the way we've categorised and labelled our navigation makes sense to people and helps them find the information quickly. We're also using this as another way to recruit more participants, because resident recruitment is really hard. And then for this in-person prototype testing, we're doing interviews to show people our prototypes. So we're going to basically just be asking them a few questions about the prototypes and setting them a few tasks as well. And these questions and tasks have been decided based on an assumptions workshop that we did. And I'll go through some of our assumptions on the next slide. So here we have assumptions that fall into 3 groups. So the first is about our proposition, and it's currently the riskiest. And we have assumptions that people understand what the directory is, what's on it, and what they can do on it. Another one is that people won't expect additional information, advice, and guidance on the directory. The second group of assumptions is around helping people navigate. So we assume that curated and topical listings will help people find relevant services, and that the user type landing pages will help people find things a bit more easily. And then our final group is around information and design. So we have assumptions that there is the right level of content on each service listing, and that tags on service listings and result pages will make it easier for people to sort of scan those longer listings and understand what each service is before they actually click into it. So as I've mentioned, we're still recruiting for both lots of research, and we're currently focusing on adult and carer groups before we move into looking to speak to sort of children and family groups and local offer groups as well. So far, we've reached out to community champions. So these are a group of volunteers from across the borough who share information about health and wellbeing issues with friends, family, and community networks. The Vision into Action group, which is a small group of Greenwich staff and partners who are experts by experience and represent resident adult social care user groups in the borough. Some residents that we recruited at a dementia pop-up event in the Woolwich Library, the Carers Group, Community Innovations Grant Project Group, which is a community members, small groups and organisations who have received grant funding from Greenwich to deliver community projects that reduce health inequalities and improve mental health and wellbeing of at-risk communities. And finally, care professionals that we spoke to at the primary care event. So as you can tell, we've reached out to quite a lot of different people, but we're still struggling to get people to commit to some in-person testing. So let us know if you do have any groups that we should reach out to, and particularly have specific people in mind, and you can just drop us their details. That would be great because we are really trying to get more people. And I'll hand over to Alex to talk about the proof of concept.
Thanks, Leisha. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'm going to talk about some work that we've just begun to create what's called a proof of concept. But before I explain what that is, I just want to take a bit of a step back and look at the journey that we've taken through Alpha, which is this phase of work where we explore different solutions before getting into the real build. So we started Alpha by experimenting with different ideas to solve the problems that we found in Discovery. And you might remember some of our experiments to try and encourage service providers to keep content up to date, or to look at how best to categorize services on the directory. Once we'd completed those, we brought together our findings and we took what worked best and turned them into our first quite early prototypes. Now, these ones were quite basic, but they really helped us get a feel for what the new directory might look like. After that, and most recently, we've been focusing on support for adults. And from this, we were able to really bring our prototypes to life a bit more by adding in some real content and really thinking about the design. And that's what Jenny just took us through. And you can see we're really starting to kind of hone in on what that new directory experience will look like for residents who are looking for support for adults. And that takes us to now, where we're developing what's called a proof of concept. And that's where we do a bit of work to check that what we've been designing is technically possible for us to build. So a proof of concept is essentially a realization of an idea in order to demonstrate its feasibility. So in the context of our work, it's about taking the designs we've created for a new directory and showing that they're feasible to build. So a proof of concept is really great at helping us identify potential technical or logistical issues with a product that we're designing. And we'd rather know about these now than when we get into the real build. So to achieve this with our proof of concepts, we'll be using kind of real technology. So up until now, we've mostly been using a design tool called Figma for our prototyping. But with a proof of concept, we'll be using tech that we could use for the real product to really understand it. A proof of concept is also usually quite small in its scope, so we don't need to create the whole directory to understand how it would work, just enough pieces of it to really get an idea of that technology. And then because of that, the proof of concept isn't going to be a finished product. It's just about understanding kind of the technical behind the scenes. So it doesn't need to be good enough to put in front of residents, for example. And this will help us work much faster. So for our directory, we're using a product called Outpost. Now, we've tested this ourselves before, and there are other councils that are using Outpost as well. So there are some things that we don't feel that we need to test. So instead, we've prioritized a few different areas for us to focus on with our proof of concept. The first is about categorization and filtering. So we want to know that whether the way that we've designed it in our prototypes fits with how it would work using the real tech. The second is around these topical and curated listings. So these are quite a new concept. So we're interested to see how we can use the tech to create these new types of content. And the final bit is all about content maintenance. So our directory has quite a lot of different bits of content that needs to be written and managed, like on the homepage or on our landing pages. So we just want to see how we can make that content really easy for staff to maintain going forward. And in terms of how we're approaching it, we're starting by taking kind of a slimmed down version of our prototype, and that will be the basis of our proof of concept. We won't include quite so many pages. Again, that's just to kind of reduce the scope and help us work a bit faster. We're then going to take that and build it using our preferred technology. So we'll be using Outpost, which is to manage the service listings in the back end. And we're going to try using LocalGov Drupal to create the resident-facing directory. And this is a bit of an experiment, so we're interested to see whether this will work. And once we've built it, we'll do some testing both within the team and with staff to look at those different areas that I had on the last slide. And the biggest area for us will really be on the content maintenance for the RBG staff. So we have quite a few groups that we want to do some testing with, just so we can be confident that this is going to be easy tech for everybody to use. And we're hoping we should get this done in the next few weeks. And if all goes to plan and we don't come up against too many issues, then that will put us in a really good place to start planning the actual build of the directory. Cool. So before we move on to the next and final section, just wanted to pause to see if anyone had any questions about the proof of concept or anything that maybe you think we should also be looking to learn about as well.
I think just to check, but Lydia, is that a legacy hand? Just to check. Yes. Cool. Fine, no worries.
I can see Mark posted to ask if we have any links to info on Outpost. We do. We have a wiki that's been set up if you'd like to have a bit of a read of it. But also in the next section, we're going to talk about a show and tell that we did. So we'll also be able to share that link with you so you can watch us talk about it as well.
Cool. Philippa?
Hello. I think I've got a bit lost about, when you did the original prototypes and you looked particularly at organizations keeping their information up to date. Can you give me a nod that I've understood that right? Yeah, cool. How is the proof of concept going to tap back into that problem space? Or I can't quite remember what we concluded about that particular problem.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So when we did some experiments, to see how can we encourage service providers to keep content up to date. And the main conclusion from that was that they need to see that it's being used by residents. And they need to see that it's a valuable tool for them and it's a valuable way for people to connect to their service. So we concluded that with the testing that we had done with Outposts, we could see that it was going to be much easier for them to use the directory themselves. So we've taken away some of the friction around updating the directory. So we knew that was a good tick. But in terms of knowing whether we can kind of make a better experience for residents, that had to just be a bit of a pivot for us. So since then, we've more focused on that. So this proof of concept isn't really gonna tap into that anymore. Because Outpost is staying as it is. This is more about with the prototypes that we've just gone through, that we've designed, how can we build them using real tech rather than just the prototyping tool that we currently have.
Okay, got it. So we might have to circle back around that problem a bit later on.
Yeah, I think it's something we'll need to kind of review constantly over time. It's one of the KPIs that we have that we're going to be measuring, and we expect it kind of to stay somewhat stable for a bit until we get people using the new directory. And even then, yeah, we think we'll need to go back to some of our opportunities that we looked at earlier on to see if there's more scope to really incentivize people to keep that up to date.
Cool, got it. Thanks, Alex.
That's right.
Okay, so I think let's move us along then, because we've only got literally a couple of slides anyway, and then we're opening up for more general questions. So let's keep on going through, and I think we're still with you, Alex, so over to you again.
Thank you. Yeah, so the final thing we just wanted to touch on was the work that we're doing to create a reusable product. So as you can probably tell, there's lots of moving parts to our work. And alongside all of this, we have a small team of people working on Outposts, which is that product that we're going to be using to manage service listings, but also the one that we're making reusable for other local authorities across the country as well. So a couple of weeks ago, we held our first show and tell specifically on that product, which we invited lots of different local authorities to. And we spent some time talking about what the product is, how it make it easy to reuse, and how other local authorities can really get involved and start using it. It was a really good, it was a really nice show and tell. We had lots of engagement. And from the back of that, we're now speaking with 13 other local authorities, all who are potentially interested in reusing our product. It's really exciting. It's really nice to get that kind of engagement, and we're really looking forward to seeing that community around that product grow over the coming weeks and months. So we did record that show and tell, so I think Beth will either drop a link into the chat now or maybe drop it later on. So if anyone would like to watch that, yeah, that's going to be there for you to see as well. So then I think finally we're just going to talk about our next steps. So over the next 4 weeks or so, the main priorities for us right now are first to complete our research with residents and synthesize our findings, and we'll be making any changes to our prototypes off the back of that we need to. We'll be building our proof of concept and reviewing our learning goals that we went through earlier, just making sure we're really confident in the tech that we're going to use, and make sure that staff at the council are going to be happy using it as well. And then finally, we'll be thinking about the beta phase for building the new directory. So thinking about how we can get the support for adults section live, as well as how we'll start designing the families and children section and local offer as well.
Sorry, trying to send a link and move the slides at the same time, which didn't work very well. But I can take over anyway, because we're coming to a close. But yeah, how to stay in touch. So as always, please read our week notes. We share these out every Friday afternoons. Come along to our future show and tells, and anything outside of that, then feel free to send myself or Alex a message, and we'll get in touch and we can have a conversation. So that's it for this afternoon. So we have closed well within time, which is hopefully gives everyone a bit of an earlier finish to the day. But before we finish completely, does anyone have any more sort of general questions, thoughts, or feedback for the team? And yeah, feel free to post that in the chat or raise your hand again if there's anything that springs to mind. Oh, straight in there. Izzy, go for it.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there are plans to have more show and tells on the kind of reusable product, because I don't seem to have any in my diary at the moment.
Yeah, so I think we will definitely be doing more of those. When we had it last week, we were going to see how the introductory one went and then make a decision as to whether or not we were going to kind of embed some of that content into these show and tells, or continue to have a separate kind of show and tell event specifically for the reusable element. I think given how much interest there's been, it might make sense for us to keep it separated for now. But myself, Alex and Paul haven't kind of circled back round on that yet and made a decision. So yeah, we'll let you know once we've kind of figured out what we're going to be doing and get those set up.
Cool, yeah, be good to know so we can obviously A, promote it, and B, just like stay in the loop with that piece of work, because yes, it's so great to already have like 13 councils kind of interested in hearing more about what you guys are up to. So be good to keep that momentum up if we can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that's all good. Any other questions from anyone? I feel like I've given it a good 20 to 25 seconds of silence. So I think there aren't any other questions or comments. But yeah, as I've already said, if there's anything else outside of this that you want to get in contact with us about, then please do. And thank you very much for spending some time with us this afternoon. And we hope to see you again soon. Cool. Thanks, everyone.